Welcome back to Wisdom Unveiled. Can you believe it? We've made it to episode 50, wrapping up our deep dive into the wisdom of Saadi.
50 episodes already.
I know. Time flies when you're exploring timeless wisdom. And before we get started, just a quick note for our listeners. Everything you're hearing is a translation of conversations with Iranian philosophers.
That's right.
So we apologize if a few things get lost in translation along the way. It happens.
Absolutely. Right? Especially with the nuances of Persian poetry and philosophy. It's always a challenge.
For sure. But even with those hurdles, Saadi's insights have really shown through these past 50 episodes.
You really have.
And today, instead of zeroing in on a single poem or a story, we're going to kind of zoom out, look at the big picture.
Yeah.
What are the core themes that have emerged from all these conversations? What makes Saadi so relevant, not just back then, but, for us here, right now?
That's a fantastic way to approach this final exploration. Saadi wasn't just a brilliant poet. He was this keen observer of human nature, and he just mastered using language to illuminate those deeper truths that we all grapple with.
Yeah, that's what I've been noticing too. As I listen back to our conversations, it's like Saadi's words kind of shift how you see the world, how you understand yourself even.
I agree.
He doesn't just give you information, he shifts your whole perspective.
It's true. A perfect illustration of this is that story about Sultan Mahmud and his loyal companion Ayaz. Remember that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Right. The one where the caravan has an accident and all the jewels are scattered everywhere.
Yes.
Everyone's scrambling to grab the valuables except Ayaz. He just stays by the Sultan's side.
Exactly. And the Sultan, sees this and he declares, "My love for this dear one is for his disposition, not for his stature and comely features."
What a line.
I know, right? So powerful. Speaks volumes about how Saadi valued inner qualities over outward appearances.
And it really makes you think, in a world that's so focused on image and, superficiality.
Right.
So Saadi's reminding us, hey, look beyond the surface. What really matters is a person's character, their kindness, their loyalty, those inner qualities that shape who they really are.
Absolutely. And it's not just about how we judge others. It's about looking inward, too.
Yeah.
It's about asking, what are we prioritizing in our own lives?
Right.
Are we chasing fleeting things, or are we cultivating those deeper aspects of ourselves? You know, that's the question Saadi constantly brings us back to.
It's a good question. And it gets even more interesting when we compare how different scholars have interpreted this same story.
Yeah.
For example, Dr. Dinani and Dr. Larijani both analyze it. But their interpretations, they're different in some really cool ways from how Rumi approached it.
It is fascinating how all three offer such valuable insights. It just goes to show that one story can hold multiple layers of meaning depending on how we approach it.
It's like, those optical illusions.
Yeah.
Where you see two different images depending on how you focus.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I just find so compelling about Saadi. His work invites us to engage on so many levels. You find your own meaning. You let those meanings evolve as we grow and change.
So it's not about finding the one right interpretation. It's about the journey.
Yes.
The journey of discovery, the insights we pick up along the way.
Absolutely. And speaking of journeys, both Dr. Dinani and Dr. Larijani highlighted this idea that within each of us, there's this yearning for something more, a deeper desire that goes beyond our everyday wants and needs.
Okay, yeah, I can get on board with that. But the question that keeps popping up for me is, how can we desire something that we can't even grasp with our senses? Like, how do we desire God if we can't see, touch, or smell the divine?
That's a big question.
I know. Feels kind of abstract.
That's where things get really, really interesting. Do you remember how Dr. Dinani broke down the nature of language itself?
Vaguely.
He talks about the speaker, the listener, and reality, and how reality is actually revealed through the interaction between them.
Okay, so we have someone speaking, someone listening.
Yeah.
And they're connecting over something real. But how does this help us understand desiring the divine?
Well, here's the mind-blowing part. Dr. Dinani argues that reality itself doesn't even appear unless there's a speaker and a listener to perceive it.
Whoa.
It's in that interaction, in that exchange of understanding, that reality comes into being.
Wait, are you saying that if there were no beings to perceive reality, it wouldn't actually exist? That's a pretty radical idea.
It is. It has some pretty profound implications for how we understand our own role in shaping the world around us. But to bring it back to your question, think about it this way. How often do you have a deep conversation with someone and walk away feeling like your understanding of the world has shifted?
All the time.
Right, like something new has been revealed. It's not just the words themselves, it's about that exchange of energy, that spark of connection where something deeper is being communicated.
So reality isn't just some fixed thing out there. It's created through our interactions, through our attempts to understand and make meaning of the world.
Exactly. And that is where Dr. Dinani sees poetry playing this crucial role. He argues that the language of poetry, unlike scientific language, is uniquely suited to expressing those aspects of reality that go beyond what we can observe and measure with our senses.
So poetry is like a different kind of language, one that taps into those realms of feeling, intuition, and spiritual experience that science can't fully capture.
You got it. And that's why Dr. Dinani sees poetry as being absolutely essential when we're trying to grasp something as vast and ultimately unknowable as God.
Okay, I could see that.
Yeah.
Like science might tell us about the physical laws of the universe, but poetry can help us understand what it means to experience awe, wonder, love, and that longing for something beyond ourselves.
Exactly. Science might describe the mechanics of a rose, but poetry can help us experience its beauty, its fragrance, the emotions that it evokes. They're both valid ways of understanding reality, but they're dealing with different aspects of it.
So you're saying that both science and poetry are necessary for a complete picture of reality.
Yes, they're like two different lenses that we can use to focus our attention on different aspects of existence. And Dr. Dinani argues that Saadi was a master of using poetic language to point us toward those deeper truths that science can't fully explain.
This is fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
But I know some people might push back and say that poetry is just imagination, while science deals with hard facts. What would Dr. Dinani say to that?
Well, he'd likely point out that science, while incredibly valuable, is still limited by what we're currently able to observe and measure. Human experience encompasses so much more than that.
Right.
Think about joy, grief, the longing for eternity. These are all real experiences, but they can't be quantified scientifically.
It's like that saying, science can't measure love, but it's the reason for everything.
Exactly. Dr. Dinani actually uses an analogy to illustrate this point. He compares the limits of scientific language to how the Ptolemaic model of the universe with Earth at the center was eventually replaced by more powerful tools and a more accurate understanding. But Saadi's language, his way of expressing those deeper truths of the human heart, remains relevant and insightful across centuries.
That's a really powerful point. It's like scientific models change as we learn more, but Saadi's tapping into something more timeless, universal, something about the human condition itself. So if poetry can help us connect with those deeper aspects of reality, what kind of knowledge does it actually provide? How does it help us understand something like God?
That's where Dr. Dinani brings in the Sufi term marifat, which is often translated as gnosis.
Okay, gnosis. Break that down for me.
Think of it as a kind of intuitive, experiential knowing. It's not just about accumulating facts about God. It's about cultivating a direct, felt sense of the divine, an understanding that goes beyond the purely intellectual.
So it's less about knowing the right answers and more about having a direct experience of something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. And Dr. Dinani argues that poetry can be a powerful tool for cultivating this kind of knowing. It helps us move beyond the limitations of our rational minds and access those deeper levels of intuition and feeling where we can connect with something beyond the everyday world.
This is all starting to click for me, how Saadi uses language, especially poetry, to point us towards those deeper truths, those experiences that go beyond just our everyday rational understanding. But how does this connect with our everyday lives? It still feels a bit abstract.
That's a great question, and it's one that both Dr. Dinani and Dr. Larijani spend a lot of time exploring. And here's where things get really interesting. They both suggest that love itself, in all its forms, can be a path towards a deeper understanding of ourselves and the divine.
Wait, are we talking about like romantic love here?
Not exclusively, but think about it this way. Even when we experience that intense, heart-pounding romantic love, it's often accompanied by a sense of longing, a desire for something more.
Like we're searching for something, even if we don't know what it is.
Exactly. And Dr. Larijani connects this back to Plato's idea that even earthly romantic love can be seen as a yearning for eternal beauty, for something perfect and complete. And this idea actually resonates deeply with Islamic philosophy as well.
So even when we fall head over heels for someone, It could be pointing us towards something bigger, something beyond just that specific person.
Right. It's like that feeling of being completely absorbed in the beauty of a sunset or a piece of music or a work of art. It evokes the sense of awe and wonder,
Yeah.
a feeling of being connected to something much larger than ourselves.
Okay, that makes sense. So instead of seeing romantic love as just about finding a partner, it's about using that experience to understand ourselves and our connection to something greater.
That's it. And there's this incredible quote from a Sufi poet that Dr. Larijani shares. The lover's ailment is separation from the beloved.
Yeah, that's powerful.
So even the pain of heartbreak, that longing for someone we've lost, can be seen as a reflection of that deeper longing for unity with something divine.
It's not about rejecting earthly love or those feelings of longing, but about seeing them as potentially pointing us towards something even more profound.
So if love is a path towards the divine, what does the final destination look like? What happens when we truly achieve that unity with God?
Well, that brings us to one of the most profound and often misunderstood concepts in Saadi's work, the concept of fana. Fana.
Yeah.
It's often translated as annihilation or extinction, but those words can be kind of misleading.
Yeah, annihilation sounds pretty intense. Like, does that mean the self just completely disappears? Gone? That's a little scary.
It's not about the self ceasing to exist. Dr. Larijani is really clear about that. Think of it more like the dissolving of the ego, that sense of separateness we usually carry around, so that we can experience a more profound state of unity.
Okay, so the ego dissolves, but the true self, like the essence of who we are, remains. Do you have an analogy that might help wrap my head around this? Dr. Larijani compares fana to a drop of water merging with the ocean.
Okay, I can picture that. The drop, it loses its individual form, but it becomes part of something vast and limitless.
Exactly. And in that merging, there's a sense of liberation, of freedom from the limitations of that separate self.
So fauna is like reaching that ultimate destination, that state of complete unity with the divine. But is that something everyone can achieve, or is it just for mystics and saints?
That's where the conversation gets really nuanced. Both Dr. Dinani and Dr. Larijani suggest that complete fauna might be a rare state, but they also believe that glimpses of it are possible for all of us.
Really? How? Give me some examples.
Well, they talk about moments of awe and wonder, like when you're standing on a mountaintop, gazing at the stars or feeling deeply connected to nature, or even losing yourself in a creative pursuit.
Oh, like when you're so absorbed in painting or writing that you completely lose track of time?
Exactly. Those moments where our sense of self kind of fades away and we experience a kind of flow and unity with something beyond ourselves. Those might be glimpses of what fauna points towards.
That's a hopeful thought. So even if we don't achieve complete fauna in this lifetime, we can still have these moments of transcendence, these moments that give us a taste of that unity.
And maybe those moments are enough to remind us that we're not just isolated individuals, but that there's this deeper reality of interconnectedness that we can tap into.
This has been a fascinating exploration of some pretty deep concepts. We've journeyed through Saadi's insights on inner beauty, the power of language, love as a path, and this profound concept of fauna.
And it's amazing how all these ideas, even the really complex ones, are all kind of woven together in Saadi's work, He's not just offering this abstract philosophy, he's showing us how these insights can inform the way we live our lives, how we relate to ourselves and the world around us.
It's like he's giving us a blueprint for living a more meaningful, more connected, more fulfilling life.
It's fascinating how this idea of language connects to Saadi's emphasis on inner transformation.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Unpack that for me. How does language tie into inner transformation?
Well, if you recall, Dr. Dinani broke down language into the speaker, the listener, and reality, emphasizing how reality is revealed through interaction. So language isn't just about conveying information, it's about shaping our perception of reality itself.
So the words we use, the stories we tell, they actually influence how we see the world.
Precisely. Saadi was a master of using language to kind of shift perspectives, to nudge us towards a deeper understanding of ourselves and the universe.
Do you have an example from Saadi's work that illustrates this point?
Think about how Saadi talks about the human heart. For him, it's not just a physical organ pumping blood, it's the center of our emotions, our intuition, even our connection to the divine.
Right. He often uses the heart as a metaphor for that inner realm where we encounter our true selves.
Exactly. By using this kind of language, weaving metaphors and imagery into his poetry, Saadi gives us this new way to access those deeper levels of our being. He's inviting us to experience reality in a more holistic, interconnected way.
It's like he's providing a whole new vocabulary for understanding our inner world. But words can be tricky, can't they?
Absolutely.
They can be misinterpreted or even misused.
Absolutely. And that's precisely why Saadi places such emphasis on the quality of our speech. He believed that the words we speak should reflect the beauty and the truth within us. Remember that famous line, "Speech is the index of the mind."
Oh, yes. That's a great reminder that our words reveal a lot about our inner state.
Absolutely.
About who we really are.
Exactly. And Saadi goes even further. He suggests that our speech can actually shape our character. If we consistently use kind, truthful, and uplifting language, it cultivates those same qualities within us.
So it's like a feedback loop. Our words influence our thoughts and actions, and those in turn shape the words we speak.
That's a great way to put it. Saadi understood this principle deeply, seeing language as this powerful tool for both self-knowledge and self-transformation.
Okay, I'm with you so far. But how do we put this into practice? How can we use language to actually cultivate those positive qualities you mentioned?
Dr. Dinani and Dr. Larijani, they offer some really practical advice here. They suggest paying close attention to how we speak, both to ourselves and to others. Are we being honest, compassionate, respectful?
Yeah.
Or are we using words to manipulate, deceive, or tear others down?
It's about being mindful of the impact our words have, not just on the people around us, but also on ourselves.
Precisely. And it's not just about avoiding negative speech. It's about actively cultivating positive ways of speaking, expressing gratitude, offering encouragement, speaking words of truth and beauty. These are all ways we can use language to uplift ourselves and those around us.
It makes a lot of sense. It's like we're training our minds to focus on the good, the beautiful, the true. And in doing so, we're changing our inner landscape.
That's exactly it. And Saadi believed that this inner transformation is fundamental to experiencing true happiness and fulfillment.
This conversation about language is really making me rethink how I communicate. It's not just about getting my point across, it's about expressing my true self and hopefully contributing to a more harmonious world.
That's a beautiful insight, and it speaks to the core of Saadi's message. He believed that language has this incredible power to connect us to the divine, to heal our wounds, and to create a more just and compassionate society. But let's be honest, the world can feel pretty chaotic and divided these days. How can Saadi's wisdom help us navigate these challenges?
Yeah, that's a million-dollar question, isn't it? How do we bridge the divides?
That's where his insights on unity and interconnectedness become really crucial.
Okay, tell me more about that. How does Saadi address this sense of division?
Saadi believed that beneath the surface of our differences, beneath all the things that seem to separate us, there's this fundamental unity that connects us all.
Like we're all threads in the same tapestry.
Yes.
Part of the same web of creation.
Exactly. And he expresses this idea beautifully throughout his work. One passage that always stands out to me is from the Gulistan. The children of Adam are limbs of one another, having been created of one essence. When the calamity of time affects one limb, the other limbs cannot remain at rest. If you have no sympathy for the troubles of others, you are unworthy to be called a human being.
Wow, that's powerful. It's a direct call to recognize our shared humanity and to act with compassion towards others.
Yeah.
Especially those who are suffering.
Exactly. Saadi is reminding us that we're not isolated individuals. We're part of a larger whole. And when one part suffers, we all suffer. It's a message that feels especially relevant today with so much division and conflict in the world.
It's so easy to get caught up in our own bubbles, to focus on the things that separate us from others. Saadi's calling us to zoom out and see that bigger picture, to remember that we're all interconnected.
Exactly. His wisdom offers this powerful antidote to that feeling of isolation that's so common in modern life. It reminds us that we're not alone, that we're part of something much larger than ourselves.
But how do we cultivate this sense of unity in our everyday lives?
Yeah.
It's one thing to talk about it, but putting it into practice can be challenging.
That's where practices like empathy and compassion come in. Dr. Dinani and Dr. Larijani emphasize the importance of stepping outside of our own limited perspectives and trying to understand the experiences of others, especially those who are different from us.
So it's about putting ourselves in someone else's shoes, trying to see the world through their eyes.
Exactly. It's not always easy. It requires a willingness to challenge our own biases and assumptions, to be open to perspectives that might make us uncomfortable, but that's where real growth happens, both individually and collectively.
It sounds like hard work, but I can see how it would be incredibly rewarding. If we can cultivate that sense of empathy, it would make us more compassionate, more understanding, more connected to the people around us.
Precisely. And it's not just about feeling good. Saadi believed that empathy and compassion are essential for building a more just and harmonious world.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. Saadi's emphasis on inner transformation, the power of language, the importance of unity, compassion, it's all interconnected. It's like a tapestry where each thread contributes to the beauty and strength of the whole.
That's a great way to put it. Saadi's wisdom is holistic. It addresses all aspects of human experience. He's not just offering philosophical ideas. He's giving us a blueprint for living a more meaningful and fulfilling life.
And a big part of that blueprint seems to be this idea of seeing beyond the surface of things, to recognize the underlying unity that connects us all.
Exactly. Saadi challenges us to move beyond those illusions of separation and embrace the interconnectedness of all beings. It's a powerful message, especially in a world that often feels so fragmented and divided.
But here's a question that comes up for me. How do we reconcile this idea of unity with the reality of individual differences? We're all unique, right? We have different backgrounds, beliefs, experiences. How can we embrace those differences while still recognizing our fundamental interconnectedness?
That's a great question, and it's one that Saadi addressed directly in his writing. He recognized that diversity is an inherent part of creation. It's what makes the world interesting and beautiful.
So it's not about erasing our differences, it's about finding a way to honor and celebrate them.
Yes.
While still recognizing our shared humanity.
Precisely. Saadi believed that true unity doesn't require uniformity. It's about recognizing that our differences actually enrich the tapestry of human experience. It's like a garden with all sorts of flowers. Each one is unique and beautiful in its own way, but together they create this stunning display of color and fragrance.
That's a great analogy. I love that. So instead of seeing our differences as something that divides us, we can view them as a source of richness and beauty.
Exactly, and Saadi even uses a similar analogy in the Gulistan. He compares the world to a garden with a variety of trees, flowers, and fruits. He says that if everything were the same, it would be monotonous and uninteresting.
So our differences are not something to be feared or suppressed. They're something to be celebrated, to be honored as part of the richness and diversity of life itself.
Exactly. Saadi's wisdom invites us to embrace the beauty of difference, to find unity not in sameness, but in that deeper connection that transcends our individual identities.
This has been a really eye-opening conversation about unity and diversity. It feels so relevant to the challenges we're facing in the world today. But I want to shift gears a bit and talk about something more personal.
Okay. I'm ready for a change of pace. What do you have in mind?
Well, we've covered a lot of ground, discussing Saadi's insights on love, the divine, and the importance of unity. But I'm curious about his views on everyday life, on the practical aspects of living a good and meaningful life. What guidance does Saadi offer in that realm?
That's a great question. Saadi does not disappoint in that area. He offers a wealth of practical advice on topics ranging from friendship to generosity to contentment.
So he's not just a lofty philosopher or a spiritual teacher, he's also this wise guide for navigating the ups and downs of daily life.
Exactly. One of the themes that really stands out in his work is the importance of self-awareness. Saadi believed that understanding our own strengths, weaknesses, and motivations is essential for making wise choices and living a fulfilling life.
It all goes back to that ancient wisdom, know thyself.
Right.
It's a simple phrase, but it's incredibly profound.
It is, and Saadi emphasized this point repeatedly. He believed that without self-knowledge, we're like ships without rudders, tossed about by the winds of fate.
I can see that. If we don't understand ourselves, how can we possibly make choices that are aligned with our values and aspirations?
Right.
We're just reacting to whatever life throws at us.
Exactly. And Saadi offers some really practical advice on how to cultivate self-awareness. He encourages us to reflect on our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions, to pay attention to the patterns that emerge in our lives.
It's about being willing to look inward, to really examine ourselves honestly.
Yes.
And to see what's there, even the parts we might not like.
That's a big part of it. And Saadi also stresses the importance of seeking honest feedback from others. Sometimes we need that outside perspective to help us see ourselves more clearly.
It can be tough to hear constructive criticism, but if we're open to it, it can be incredibly valuable for our growth.
Absolutely. And Saadi saw this process of self-discovery as a lifelong journey. It's not something we achieve overnight. It requires patience, humility, and a willingness to continually learn and grow.
It's not about reaching some kind of perfect state of self-knowledge, right?
Yeah.
It's about that ongoing process of becoming more aware of who we are and what truly matters to us.
You got it. And Saadi believed that this journey of self-discovery is deeply intertwined with our relationships with others.
Okay, tell me more about that. How do our relationships play into this?
Saadi saw our interactions with others as mirrors reflecting back to us our own strengths and weaknesses.
So by paying attention to how we relate to others, how they respond to us, we can gain valuable insights into our own patterns and behaviors.
Exactly. And he wasn't afraid to be specific about the qualities that contribute to healthy and fulfilling relationships. He emphasized things like trustworthiness, kindness, generosity, and patience.
It's easy to focus on what we want from others, but Saadi's reminding us that we need to cultivate those qualities in ourselves
Yeah.
if we want to build strong and supportive relationships.
Right. And Saadi emphasizes that relationships are not just about receiving love and support, they're also about giving those things freely to others.
It's about that reciprocal flow of kindness and compassion.
Exactly. And for Saadi, true generosity flows from a place of abundance, from a heart that's overflowing with love and compassion.
It's not about giving out of obligation or a sense of duty. It's about sharing our blessings with others because it brings us joy to do so.
Exactly. And Saadi saw this close connection between generosity and the virtue of contentment.
Okay, contentment. That's a big one, especially in today's world. It seems like everyone's constantly striving for more. More possessions, more achievements, more status. How can we cultivate contentment in a culture that's so focused on acquisition and achievement?
That's a question that's as relevant today as it was in Saadi's time. And he offers some timeless wisdom on this topic. For Saadi, true contentment doesn't come from external possessions or accomplishments. It comes from an inner state of peace and acceptance.
So it's not about having everything we want, but about appreciating what we already have.
You got it. And Saadi reminds us that focusing on what we lack only breeds dissatisfaction and unhappiness. True contentment comes from shifting our focus to the blessings that are already present in our lives.
So it's about cultivating gratitude,
Right.
taking the time to really appreciate the good things, both big and small, that we often take for granted.
That's a big part of it. And Saadi suggests finding ways to practice gratitude in our daily lives. Expressing appreciation to others, taking time to savor simple pleasures, reflecting on the positive things that have happened throughout the day. These are all simple but powerful practices.
It sounds like a real shift in perspective, a way of training our minds to focus on the positive, rather than getting caught up in the negative.
Exactly. And Saadi believed that this shift in perspective is crucial for living a truly happy and fulfilling life.
I love this idea. It's so easy to get caught up in the "I'll be happy when" trap, always chasing after something more. But Saadi's reminding us that happiness is available right now
Yes.
if we choose to focus on what we already have.
It's a powerful reminder, and it's something I try to keep in mind in my own life. But let's be realistic. Life isn't always easy.
Right.
We all face challenges, setbacks, and losses.
Yeah,
How does Saadi's wisdom help us navigate those difficult times?
that's a great point. Life throws curveballs.
Yeah.
And sometimes it feels like we're getting knocked down again and again. What does Saadi have to say about resilience? About picking ourselves up and keeping going.
Well, Saadi recognized that suffering is simply an unavoidable part of the human experience. We all go through periods of loss, heartbreak, disappointment. It's part of what it means to be human. But he believed that we have the inner strength to weather those storms and emerge even stronger on the other side.
So it's not about avoiding hardship or pretending it doesn't exist. It's about finding ways to cope with it
Yes,
in a healthy and productive way.
exactly. And Saadi offers some really practical advice on how to cultivate resilience. He emphasizes maintaining perspective, focusing on what we can control, and drawing strength from our inner resources.
Okay, can you break those down for me?
Yeah.
I'd love to hear more about how we can actually put those ideas into practice.
Well, when it comes to maintaining perspective, Saadi reminds us that even in the midst of difficulty, there are always things to be grateful for. He encourages us to focus on the good that still remains, to remind ourselves that this too shall pass, and to trust that even in the darkest of times, there's a light within us that can never be extinguished.
I love that. It's so easy to get swept away by the negativity, to lose sight of the good. But Saadi's urging us to intentionally shift our focus,
Yeah.
to look for those glimmers of hope and beauty that are always there, even when they're hard to see.
That's a great way to put it. And when it comes to focusing on what we can control, Saadi reminds us that we may not always be able to change our circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them.
Okay, I'm with you there, but that can be so hard, especially when life feels really unfair.
I hear you. But Saadi would say that even in the face of great adversity, we still have the power to choose. We can choose to react with anger, bitterness, or despair, or we can choose to respond with courage, compassion, and a determination to learn and grow from the experience.
It's about taking responsibility for our own inner state, for how we choose to meet the challenges that come our way.
Exactly. And Saadi believed that this ability to choose our response, to find meaning and purpose even in the midst of suffering, is at the heart of true resilience.
This is making me think about how I approach my own struggles. I tend to resist, to wish things were different. But Saadi's urging us to find a different way, a path of acceptance and inner strength.
You're getting it. And Saadi saw this process of transformation as being deeply connected to the virtue of acceptance.
Okay, acceptance. That's a tough one.
Yes, it is.
Especially in our culture, which is all about fighting against reality,
Right.
trying to control every aspect of our lives. How can we cultivate acceptance, especially when we're facing situations that we don't like?
That's a great question, and it's one that Saadi addresses with both wisdom and compassion. He understood that acceptance isn't about resignation or giving up. It's about acknowledging the reality of a situation, both the good and the bad, without resistance or judgment.
So it's about letting go of that need to control everything, to force things to be different from how they actually are?
You're on the right track. And Saadi understood that this process of letting go can be incredibly difficult, especially when we're dealing with loss, pain, or disappointment. But he believed that true peace and freedom come from accepting what is, from surrendering to the flow of life, even when it takes us in directions we didn't anticipate.
It sounds almost paradoxical, doesn't it? Like we're supposed to surrender to what is,
Yeah.
but also find the strength to move forward. How do we hold both of those things at the same time?
That's the beauty of Saadi's wisdom. He embraces those paradoxes, those seemingly contradictory truths that are at the heart of human experience.
And he doesn't offer easy answers or quick fixes, right?
Mm.
He's inviting us to really grapple with those complexities, to wrestle with those difficult questions, and to find our own unique path to wisdom and fulfillment.
You got it. And he reminds us that we don't have to do it alone.
Mm.
We have each other.
Right.
We have the wisdom of those who have come before us. And we have that spark of the divine within each of us to guide us through even the darkest of times.
This whole conversation about resilience, acceptance, and the inevitable challenges of life is really making me think about how I approach my own struggles. I tend to resist, to wish things were different. But Saadi's urging us to find a different way, a path of acceptance and inner strength.
That's a powerful insight. And it really speaks to the essence of Saadi's message. He's not just a poet, he's a guide, a mentor, a wise friend who's walking alongside us on this journey of life, offering his wisdom and compassion every step of the way. And one of the things I appreciate most about Saadi is his sense of humor. He doesn't shy away from the darkness, from the pain and suffering that are part of life, but he also infuses his work with wit and playfulness.
That's so true. He reminds us not to take ourselves too seriously. It's something I've noticed in his work,
Yeah.
but I haven't really thought about it deeply.
Saadi's humor can catch you off guard, but it's such a gift. It's a reminder that life is not meant to be taken too seriously.
Yeah.
He's inviting us to lighten up, to find moments of joy and laughter, even in the midst of challenges.
Okay, so now I need an example. Do you have a favorite Saadi story or quote that really showcases that sense of humor?
One of my favorites is from the Gulistan. He tells the story about a man who is complaining to his friend about how difficult his life is. And the friend listens patiently, then says, "My dear fellow, consider yourself fortunate. At least you're not married to my wife."
Oh, that's classic. Saadi's definitely got a knack for finding the absurdity in everyday situations.
Exactly. And his humor isn't just about making us laugh. It's also a way of pointing out our own foibles, our tendency to take ourselves too seriously, and our need to lighten up and embrace the imperfections of life.
It's like he's giving us permission to laugh at ourselves, to find the humor even in the midst of our struggles.
You got it. Saadi's humor is a reminder that even when things are tough, we can still find reasons to smile, to connect with others, and to appreciate the absurdity of it all. It's a beautiful thing.
I love that we're ending this part of the conversation on such a lighthearted note.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that's central to Saadi's work, the concept of the divine.
Okay. I'm ready to dive back into that spiritual realm. What aspect of Saadi's understanding of the divine are you most curious about?
Well, we've talked about how Saadi uses language to point us towards the divine, how love can be a path towards understanding God, and even about that ultimate state of unity represented by fauna. But I'm wondering, how does Saadi conceive of the nature of God itself? What does he say about the attributes of the divine?
That's a great question. Saadi's approach to this topic is incredibly profound and poetic. He often uses metaphors and analogies to describe the divine, recognizing that human language can never fully capture the essence of God.
So it's not about defining God in a rigid or dogmatic way.
Right.
It's about using language to evoke a sense of wonder and awe,
Yeah.
to point towards something that's ultimately beyond our comprehension.
Exactly. And one of the attributes Saadi emphasizes over and over again is God's all-encompassing love and mercy. He portrays the divine as a loving parent, a compassionate friend, a source of endless grace and forgiveness.
That's a beautiful image. It's very different from the vengeful or wrathful God that's sometimes portrayed in religious texts.
It is. Saadi's understanding of God is rooted in the Sufi tradition, which emphasizes the divine attributes of love, beauty, and compassion.
Do you have a favorite passage from Saadi that really exemplifies this idea of God's love and mercy?
One that always touches my heart is from the Bustan. If you desire the love of God, show mercy to his creation, for a compassionate heart is the throne of the Almighty.
Wow, that's powerful. It suggests that our actions, how we treat others, are a reflection of our relationship with the divine.
Exactly. Saadi believed that the way we treat each other is ultimately the way we treat God. If we want to experience God's love and mercy, we need to extend that same love and mercy to all beings.
It's such an important message, and it feels especially relevant today. There's so much division and animosity in the world, but Saadi's reminding us that it all starts with how we treat one another.
Absolutely. But here's a question that often comes up. How does this idea of God's all-encompassing love square with the reality of suffering in the world?
Right.
If God is so loving and merciful, why do bad things happen to good people?
Yeah, that's a question that's wrestled philosophers and theologians for centuries.
Yeah.
Does Saadi offer any insight into this age-old dilemma?
He does. Saadi doesn't shy away from acknowledging the existence of suffering, but he also offers a perspective that can help us make sense of it.
Okay, I'm really curious to hear this. What's Saadi's take on the role of suffering?
Well, Saadi believed that suffering, while painful, can be a catalyst for growth and transformation. He often compares it to the refining of gold. Just as gold must be heated and purified in a crucible to reach its full potential, so too must we go through trials and tribulations in order to become our best selves.
So it's not that God is deliberately inflicting suffering upon us. It's that suffering is an inevitable part of the human experience, and it can actually serve a purpose in our spiritual development.
That's a great way to put it. Saadi believed that those difficult experiences, those challenges and setbacks, can help us develop resilience, compassion, and a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world.
Like when we go through a really tough experience and we come out on the other side feeling stronger, wiser, more compassionate, it's like we've been forged in fire.
Exactly. And Saadi reminds us that even in the midst of suffering, even when we feel lost and alone, God's love and mercy are always present.
It's not that God abandons us when we're going through tough times. It's that God is there with us every step of the way, offering support and guidance, even when we don't feel it.
That's beautifully said. And Saadi's poetry is filled with expressions of this unwavering divine presence, even in the darkest moments.
Can you share an example that speaks to you, one that illustrates this idea?
One of my favorites is from the Bustan. Though the world may seem dark and despairing, know that the sun of God's mercy is always shining. Even when hidden behind clouds, its light never ceases to illuminate the hearts of those who seek it.
That's such a powerful image. It's a reminder that even when we feel lost and alone, that divine light is always there, like a beacon of hope guiding us through the storm.
It is. And Saadi's poetry is a testament to the transformative power of that divine love. He believed that by connecting with that source of love and mercy, we can access a wellspring of strength, wisdom, and compassion that can help us navigate even the most difficult challenges.
This conversation about God's love and mercy is really inspiring. It's a reminder that even in the face of suffering, there's this deeper reality of love and interconnectedness that can sustain us. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about something a little more practical.
Okay, I'm ready for a change of pace. What do you have in mind?
Well, we've talked a lot about Saadi's spiritual insights, but I'm also curious about his views on ethics and morality. What kind of guidance does he offer on how to live a good and virtuous life?
That's a great question. Saadi was deeply concerned with ethics and morality, and his work is full of practical advice on how to behave ethically and make choices that lead to a fulfilling life.
So he's not just a spiritual teacher. He's also a moral guide, offering wisdom on how to live a life of integrity and purpose.
Exactly. And one of the central themes in Saadi's ethical teachings is the importance of justice and fairness.
Justice and fairness, those are big concepts. How does Saadi define them?
For Saadi, justice is about treating all beings with equity and compassion, regardless of their social status, wealth, or beliefs. He believed that every human being possesses inherent worth and dignity, and we have a moral obligation to treat each other with respect and kindness.
It's about recognizing the inherent value of every human being, regardless of their differences,
Yes.
their background, their beliefs.
You got it. And for Saadi, justice was inextricably linked to fairness. He believed that we should strive to create a society where everyone has equal opportunities to thrive and reach their full potential.
So it's not just about treating each other fairly in our personal interaction.
Right.
It's about working towards a more just and equitable society as a whole,
Yes,
where everyone has a chance to flourish.
that's a great point. And Saadi believed that achieving justice and fairness requires both individual and collective effort. We need to cultivate those qualities in our own lives while also advocating for social change, working to create a world where everyone has access to basic human rights and opportunities.
It's a reminder that our actions, both big and small, can contribute to a more just and compassionate world.
Absolutely. And Saadi doesn't just talk about these concepts in abstract terms. He gives practical guidance on how to live them out. He stresses honesty, integrity, trustworthiness, qualities that are essential for building strong communities and relationships.
Those are values that most people would say they admire. But it's easy to talk about them. It's much harder to consistently embody them in our daily lives.
That's true. And Saadi reminds us that actions speak louder than words. If we want to be seen as just and fair, we need to act accordingly.
It's about walking the talk. Right?
Yes.
Living in alignment with our values.
Exactly. And Saadi believed that true virtue is not about blindly following a set of rules. It's about cultivating a compassionate heart and making choices that align with our highest values.
It's about striving to be our best selves, even when it's hard, even when we make mistakes.
Exactly. Saadi recognized that this journey of ethical and spiritual growth is an ongoing process. We all make mistakes, but it's our willingness to learn from those mistakes and to keep striving towards the good that truly matters. It's about that continuous self-reflection, self-improvement, and commitment to living a life of purpose and meaning.
That's a beautiful way to frame it. It's not about perfection, it's about progress.
Precisely. And Saadi's wisdom provides a compass for that journey, a reminder that even amidst life's complexities, we have the power to choose a path that leads us toward a more just, compassionate, and fulfilling world.
This conversation about ethics and morality is a powerful reminder that Saadi's wisdom isn't just about personal enlightenment, it's also about building a better world for everyone.
Absolutely. He challenges us to think about how our individual choices impact the collective, how our actions ripple outwards and affect the world around us.
But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about something that's often perceived as being at odds with spirituality, the pursuit of wealth and material possessions.
Okay.
How does Saadi reconcile these two seemingly disparate realms?
That's a fascinating question, and it's one that a lot of people struggle with today. Saadi doesn't condemn wealth or material possessions outright. He recognized that they can be useful tools for living a comfortable life and contributing to society.
So it's not about rejecting wealth altogether. It's about finding that middle ground between the material and the spiritual.
Exactly. Saadi believed the key is to avoid becoming attached to those possessions, to see them as a means to an end, not as an end in themselves.
It's about using wealth wisely for good purposes rather than letting it control us or define our worth.
Right. And Saadi reminds us that true wealth lies not in what we own, but in the richness of our inner lives, the quality of our relationships, our connection to something larger than ourselves.
It's a powerful reminder that material things might provide temporary comfort or pleasure, but they can't bring lasting happiness or fulfillment. That comes from somewhere deeper.
Absolutely. And Saadi cautions us against the pitfalls of greed and materialism. He saw those qualities as leading to dissatisfaction, unhappiness, and ultimately a disconnect from the things that truly matter.
So it's not about demonizing wealth. It's about being aware of its potential pitfalls and making conscious choices about how we relate to it.
You've got it. And Saadi offers some practical advice on maintaining a healthy relationship with wealth. He encourages generosity, using our resources to help others, and avoiding that trap of always wanting more, more, more.
It's about finding that sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
Enjoying the material comforts of life while staying grounded in those deeper spiritual values.
That's it. And Saadi reminds us that true abundance comes not from how much we have, but from a heart that's filled with gratitude, contentment, and a willingness to share our blessings with others.
This conversation about wealth and materialism really hits home. Saadi's wisdom is so relevant to the world we live in today.
I agree.
We're constantly bombarded with messages about acquiring more, achieving more, consuming more, but Saadi offers a different path, a path of inner richness, generosity, and contentment.
It's a path that's available to everyone, regardless of their financial status. True wealth, as Saadi defines it, is about the state of our hearts and the quality of our lives.
What a beautiful thought to carry with us as we navigate the complexities of modern life.
This whole conversation about Saadi's wisdom has been incredibly enriching. We've explored his insights on love, language, the divine, ethics, resilience, even humor. What do you think is his most enduring contribution to humanity? What stands out to you?
That's a great question. And it's hard to choose just one aspect of Saadi's work that, stands above the rest. But I think what resonates with me most is his ability to bridge that gap between the spiritual and the practical, the eternal and the everyday.
That's a brilliant observation. He weaves those realms together seamlessly.
Exactly. Saadi's wisdom isn't just about, lofty philosophical concepts or mystical experiences. It's about the nitty-gritty of living a good life, navigating those messy human relationships, making choices that lead to well-being for ourselves and for others.
He's not just a spiritual teacher. He's a wise guide for navigating the ups and downs of everyday life.
And he does it with such eloquence, wit, and compassion that his words continue to resonate centuries later. They speak to something deep within us, regardless of our cultural or religious background.
It's a testament to the universality of his message. Saadi's wisdom transcends time and place, speaking to those timeless truths about the human condition, about our search for meaning, connection, and fulfillment.
And he does it in a way that's both profound and accessible. He doesn't shy away from life's complexities, but he doesn't get lost in abstract theories either. He speaks directly to the heart, offering practical advice and relatable stories.
Exactly. And that's what makes Saadi's legacy so enduring. He's not just a poet for the scholars and the historians. He's a wise friend and mentor who continues to guide us on our own journeys of self-discovery and transformation.
This has been an incredible journey through Saadi's wisdom. We've explored so much, but I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
There's always more to uncover with Saadi. His work is a wellspring of wisdom that we can keep returning to throughout our lives.
And as we conclude this deep dive, I want to encourage you, our listeners, to continue exploring Saadi's work. Read his poetry, reflect on his stories, and let his wisdom guide you on your own path.
And remember, even though our formal exploration of Saadi is coming to a close, the journey of learning and growth is ongoing. Keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep letting wisdom illuminate your way.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible adventure. Until next time, may your hearts be filled with love, your minds with wisdom, and your spirits with that yearning for something more.